If student loan debt was such a problem, then why does the federal government keep handing out these loans like they're candy?
Hey, I'm Alex,
And I'm Philip,
and we teach you what you need to know about being a grown-up.
because adulting shouldn't suck. In this video today, we're going to be talking about whether or not student loans are a scam.
So if you're watching this video, you probably wondered about how you would afford going to college, or how many student loans you might have to take out if you wanted to go to college because maybe your parents or your teachers told you that that's the only way you're going to be successful. And if you graduated from high school and you didn't go to college, then you're not going to make as much money, which may or may not be true. And we're going to break down why. I know for myself, I think that student loans are absolutely a scam and that they're predatory on people who don't know any better, because they're constantly fed from the time that they're a little kid until they graduate from high school that they have to do this if they want to be successful in life. And then student loans that are backed by the government are the only type of debt that you can't file bankruptcy and get rid of.
So yeah, just like Alex was saying, it's ridiculous. And if you can't afford to pay for the college yourself, or your parents can't afford to pay it, then the only way that you can go to college is by getting scholarships or getting student loans. And even if you get scholarships, that typically doesn't cover the 100% of the cost of the school that you're going to have to go to. So student loans, it's been the buzz talk for quite some time. Student loan debt is out of control. People can't afford to pay their student loans. People are getting student loans on jobs that don't make them enough money to pay back the money that they had borrowed. And it's just a continual cycle. And as it goes on, the federal government's like, we can do some relief, some student loan forgiveness to help these people that have had, the overbearing student loan debt problem that's been hanging over their head for so long. But with this, they're still not fixing the problem. The federal government is the ones who are allowing people to get student loans, and they're the ones giving them out. And they're saying who can get them and where they can get them from, and et cetera, et cetera. So even if they're giving out $10,000 of student loan forgiveness, they're still not fixing the problem, because the cost of education is just ridiculously high.
I mean, incomes can't keep up with it. If you look at the last 30 years, incomes have gone up 200%, while college has gone up 1,200%. It's absolutely unaffordable. And even if you get some kind of grant from the federal government, it's not going to cover 100% of your tuition. And then on top of that, you got to pay for cost of living, which is usually $10,000 to $15,000 or more, depending on where you live, on top of tuition every year. So all these people keep graduating, thinking that they're going to, have the education that's going to get them the job that they want, that's going to lead to a life where they're not going to struggle, hopefully, to pay bills. Mm-hmm. And then what really happens for most people, unless you get some kind of professional degree, like a doctor or a lawyer or a nurse or an engineer, where you need those actual certifications and training that you get from college, most of these other degrees, I think that the statistic is like 50% of people don't even use that degree for the field that they go into. Honestly, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but it was absolutely a scam that you had to pay all that money, spend all these years going through a system that doesn't work to your advantage in the long run. It's going to make your life a lot harder for most people paying those student loans back, which is why so many people want student loan forgiveness, because it ruins their life as a young adult when you're getting started.
As of 2022, the national student loan debt was $1.7 trillion.
Can't even understand how much money that is, in real numbers.
Trillion. That's so much money. The average person has $37,000 in student loans, and that's not including any of the interest that they have to pay over the life of their loan. Now, on average, people are saying it's going to take me 10 years to pay off the student loan debt. But in reality, it's actually taken these people 20 years to pay off this $37,000. And once they graduate, then 6 months later, they have to start making these monthly payments, which on average is like $300 to $400. And 6 months, these people got this awesome degree, but they go into this job that doesn't even require their degree, because the degree that they got, there's a 1% job growth, and they have a very small chance of being able to get a job in that field. So they went to college for all of this time, and they got this degree that doesn't land them a job right away. So they're working at Walmart or Starbucks or wherever they can get hired to start paying their student loans that aren't making them enough money to make those monthly payments. And the cycle just continues on and on and on and on and on, forever and ever.
Well, I think part of the problem too is that there's not much mentoring that goes into the you need to go to college process of, how to go to college and not take out tons of loans. Even if you don't have the money to go to college, there are ways that you can go about going to college without amassing huge amounts of debt. I know we both joined the military. I used it to pay for college. There's companies out there like even Chipotle or Starbucks. There's all kinds of companies now that
UPS,
offer
Taco
different
Bell.
ways to go to college. But beyond that, the mentoring part that I was talking about is, I know myself and tons of my friends went to college. We weren't told, hey, you need to go work in a relevant field while you're in college so that you have that work experience when you graduate to go get a job in the field that you want, because most places want experience with that degree. So if you graduate without that experience, you know, whether you interned or had a job in a similar career field or whatever it was, then you graduate with this cool little diploma, but you still can't go get the job that you want because you don't have the experience.
Yeah. What's funny, but it's not funny, is there's more regulations on somebody who's 18 years old to get a credit card than there is for somebody who's 18 years old to get a $40,000 student loan. You know, they're like, oh yeah, it's fine. Just take this. You know, if student loans were like more transparent and more honest with the reality of how it works, I think a lot less people would get them.
So I absolutely agree with that. You brought up a great point. And this is the biggest reason why I think student loans are a scam by the federal government specifically, because they back them. The government, and by that I mean the federal government and then the school, the education system, push going to college from the time you're in elementary school all the way through high school as the only way that you're really going to be successful. They don't push military, they don't push trade school, they don't push being an entrepreneur for the most part. Right? I can't blanket statement that, but most schools don't push anything else other than you got to go to college. It's the best way to make more money. And to go off what Philip was going to say, or what he was saying, is the federal government, they know that when you're 18, you typically don't have any financial knowledge. Most schools let you graduate without teaching you about finances, unless you're graduating from one of the few states that require it. Then most likely you don't have a strong financial foundation that you're graduating with. But they're going to let you borrow $40, $50, $60, $80,000 or more that you have to pay back. Mm-hmm. You can't get rid of it. You can't file for bankruptcy. You have to pay it back at some point. Whether you're getting into a high-earning job after you graduate from college or don't even graduate from college and you drop out, you still have to pay for these student loans, and you can't file bankruptcy. You can never discharge it. So in my opinion, I guess going back to the beginning of this, is I do think it's a scam. I think that student loans are absolutely a scam that prey on people who don't know any better. So, I mean, it blows my mind that there isn't a ton of regulation that demand students have a strong financial background in order to qualify and take out these loans. All you gotta do is sign your master promissory note, promise to repay it, and they'll give you money.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so yes, part scam, right? Because they know what they're doing, and then also part on the consumer, obviously, because we can't just blanket the problem just to one person. I think the consumer is almost as equally as responsible here, because they should know what they're getting into, and they should take the time to do that research to make sure that they're getting the appropriate amount of loans to cover realistically what they need. The problem being is a lot of people, they want that instant gratification. They want that solution right now, or they want to go to that prestigious school that their friends are going to when they can get the same degree that's going to get them into the same job from a school that's substantially cheaper, or going through a community college, or taking longer to get their degree, right? But going and working at the same time as they are paying the tuition and going to school, like part-time. You know, there's a lot that the consumer can do as well to limit their student loans. Like, we went to the military. People can get scholarships. People can go to community colleges instead of going to their prestigious school that makes them think that they're cooler or what have you. So, scam, yes, but also just as bad on the consumer, my opinion.
So to play devil's advocate to that, I don't know if the consumer really has a whole lot of fault on that one, because they're indoctrinated that that's the way to become successful. And maybe it's not even at school. Maybe it's by their parents, because for the boomers, right, for our parents, that was the formula to be successful. Go to college, get a good job, stay at that job until you die, and you'll get a great pension. Well, pensions aren't a thing anymore.
Right.
Almost everybody has degrees, so it doesn't make you, more qualified than most people now. It just puts you on a level playing field.
Absolutely.
And then as another disqualifying factor, then places are like, oh, well, now you have to have a master's. And it's paying $20 an hour, which whatever.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if it's necessarily the consumer's fault, the kid's fault that's taking out these loans. I think they're being fed all kinds of information that's irrelevant in today's world. So maybe it's not even the teachers or the education system. I mean, they definitely play a part in it, but it could be from home too, right? So those parents could be teaching them that.
Yeah.
And if you come to America and you're an immigrant and you hear that that's how you become successful in America, you might regurgitate that to your kids too and not know any better. And it's not like the system is teaching people to do critical thinking of, hey, if I take out student loans, how much am I going to be able to pay back based on the salary that I'm going to make in that career field?
Yeah.
And is it going to crush me, these $300, $400, $500 a month payments? Or am I going to make enough money to get by, make those payments, and still have enough money to, have fun, have a savings, and go on a vacation? Or am I barely going to scrape by, or am I not going to scrape by at all? Because, like you were saying, so many people are taking out student loans and can't pay them back. I think the statistic is like slightly more than 1 out of every 4 people are in default, which means they can't pay back their student loans, which is why there's such a huge push in America right now to just forgive student loans, because so many people are struggling with the pain of not being able to afford paying all that stuff back. So when I hear people say, oh, it's their fault for taking out the money, well, yes, but also nobody taught them. So that's a major gap that, in my opinion, yeah, it's their fault, but also it's society's fault for failing people, right? It started with the millennials, and it's trickling down to Gen Z. And I mean, I'm not struggling with it because we went, through the government and they paid for it. But what about everybody else?
Yeah. I mean, they as in, the government, they should absolutely make this type of education, right, to teach these people about these type of loans more available. They should be in high school, like, okay, you want student loans, then you need to take this class. And they should teach them all about the student loan process and how it works and how the repayment works and what they're realistically going to pay. But they don't because, they want their money, right?
But they should also include the struggles and the hardships that come with taking out student loans that you can't afford.
Well, it's funny.
They make it all rosy and beautiful and, oh, you can be so successful, but they don't talk about the downside of it. And that's why so many people struggle with it, because they just heard the good things that a student or a college education can get you. Just take out these student loans and it's going to lead you to success.
Well, it's funny, right? So the federal government is the one who says who you can get your federal or who you can get student loans from, right? And then your student loans are federally backed, right? And then the federal government sells these loans to these private entities that refinance your loans. So now the government's getting paid from these private entities that are refinancing. So they're good. Your debt is no longer the federal government's debt. It's now a debt to this private bank or this private, agency, and they're the ones that are going to determine what your repayment is and your interest rate and et cetera. So the federal government got their money and they're like, cool, man, and they're good, and they just continue this process, and it's a continual thing, and they're like, well, we'll give you student loan forgiveness, but in reality it's a baby Band-Aid that they're putting on a problem that they're in control of and that they have created. So I just think it's kind of funny that it's only on surface level of like, oh, well, this is the problem, but they're not looking deep into the problem to see, well, actually the people that are fixing the problem are also creating the problem. So it's just kind of funny to me.
So the other part of the problem too is the colleges themselves. So the more money the government gives them, the more they skyrocket the price of education.
Right.
So, by forgiving student loans, is that just going to make the problem worse? So if you look at like the top 10 colleges and their endowment funds, they all have more money sitting in their bank accounts than almost every single company in the top 500 companies in America.
Oh, man.
So they are just bank rolling money, and they are the problem. The federal government's the problem because they give people access to money that shouldn't have access to it without any kind of knowledge. So that's why I think they're predatory. But then the colleges are absolutely part of the problem.
Yeah, 100%. I read this article last week about student loans. They said that if the U.S. were to wipe out all of that $1.7 trillion in student debt, that by 2035, that debt would be right back to where it was.
It's because you didn't fix the problem.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to is you're not fixing the problem. The problem, honestly, it's systemic all throughout the education system. I never once heard while I was in high school, maybe they talk about it now, but a 4-year degree on average takes 5 or 6 years. So you're not just paying that tuition for 4 years and then voila, you're done. I mean, maybe some people, but it's 60% of people take 6 years to get a 4-year degree. So you might have a $37,000 average student loan debt throughout the country, but there's people who have a way higher amount of debt than that they graduate with.
Yeah.
And what you were talking about earlier, a lot of people's parents say, or they push, hey, get into the most prestigious college that you can possibly qualify for. And then, that's going to get you a better job. Well, we both have a good friend that went to a private university, and for a nursing degree, I think she took out $180,000 to pay for her degree that she probably could have got for $50,000 or $60,000 and made the exact same amount of money. But she was pushed to go to the most prestigious college because she came from a family that didn't have a lot of money, and it looked like, hey, this is the way to be successful. You go to a bigger college that's more prestigious, you're going to get a better job, when in reality, you get the same job.
Yeah. So in 2020, President Trump put a freeze on all student loan payments. Here in 2022, 89% of the borrowers are not ready to start making their monthly payments to their student loans again. I mean, it's 2 years later, and 89% of the student loan borrowers are not ready to resume their monthly payments.
I mean, in that time, to be fair, everything has gone up in price because of inflation.
Right.
Rent's way harder to afford, houses are more expensive, gas is, depending on the month, double or triple the amount that it was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
So just life in general is harder to afford. And then, so a couple years have gone by. Well, now that everything's more expensive, how do you expect these people to start making those $400 a month payments again if they haven't bettered their life and increased their income when, maybe their rent went up by 50% in the last 2 years?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And all those things roll into why I think it's a scam. You might not think it's a scam. And if you have a career path where you need to have a college degree in order to be successful, a professional degree like a doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, engineer, like I was saying, then college is a necessity. You have to do that. And if I have somebody operating on me, I sure hope they went to college, right? They're not throwing me in a bathtub and taking out my kidneys. But if you don't need those things in order to get the degree or to get the job that you want, or maybe you don't even know what you want to do, going to college to figure that out is a horrible way and a really expensive way to figure out what it is you want to do or to find yourself. There's a lot of other things you can do to figure out what you're passionate about or what's going to bring you some kind of purpose or how you want to add value to the world than just going to school and borrowing money to figure it out.
Yeah, that's absolutely the worst idea that you can do is you're like, I'm just going to go to school and figure it out. 100% not the answer. Now, like Alex was saying, if there's a career that you are passionate about and that you want to do it, and you do need to get student loans, just take the time to do your homework and actually see what you're getting yourself into. Because like we had said, student loans aren't horrible if you're responsible about them and you know what you're getting yourself into. If you're taking out the appropriate amount of money for the job that you need, and there's a good chance of you getting that job that you want after you graduate, and you're making enough money to pay off the student loans, then cool. But if you don't take that time to do that type of homework and research and go down the rabbit hole on the student loans, then you're going to end up just like everybody else with a massive amount of debt and monthly payments that could equal to a Mercedes-Benz or something.
So one last thing that I really want to throw into this is I think it's kind of gotten lost in the last 10 years. I don't hear it very often, but if you're going to go to college, take out a 1-to-1 ratio. Your student loans should never exceed your first year income at whatever the job is that you're going to do. So if you're going to start out at $40,000, do not take out more than $40,000 of loans. If you take out more than that, then it's going to put excessive strain on your finances every single month, and then it's going to be a pain point of making those payments, and it's going to make your life a lot harder. You're not going to be able to afford to do as much or to have a life because when trying to live on $40,000 a year right now isn't easy anyways.
Yeah.
But That's kind of been lost. I haven't heard that in a long time from very many people, but a 1-to-1 ratio. And then take the time to figure out how much the job you want to do actually pays in your area. I hardly ever see anybody do that either, or hear about people doing it. So you can always go to sites like bls.gov and look up, I don't know, if you want to be a firefighter in Ohio, you can figure out what a firefighter in Ohio starts out at, what their median pay is halfway through their career, what the top out range is, and then you can figure out, is this job worth going to school for? Yeah, and then it'll talk about the requirements. Do you need a bachelor's to become a firefighter, which you don't. But I'm just using that one as an example, and that's how you can start doing some research before even taking out a degree to figure out, is this something I even need a degree for?
Yeah. So, in the comments below, let us know what you guys think about this video. And if you'd like to see some more videos like this, then let us know, and we might start a podcast channel.
We'll see you in the next video.